Raise your hands if you have a multi-vendor switch and or Wi-Fi solution. Okay? Raise your hands if you want to automate or manage that solution, multi-vendor solution. So a handful of you, right? What I'm talking about today is really a problem that a lot of people are going to see more of. The challenge today is that with a multi-vendor solution, it's difficult to manage that from one platform. As Mike Albano talked about yesterday, and he's doing a deep dive, there's some great ways to do that, and that's what I'm talking about today. So the problem really is that the different platforms have different learning curves. If you have Cisco, you have to learn multiple interfaces. If you have Arista, you have to learn different things. If you have Aruba, multiple interfaces, very complex. As you know, all know, Wi-Fi is actually a very complex system, and the switching side of the world can be equally complex. So having all these unique UIs and systems and different CLIs and different APIs is a real challenge to manage a multiple system. And because of that, it's also difficult to automate, because even though you may have APIs that can do certain things for one system, they don't use the same APIs for a different system. They don't use the same syntax. They don't use the same data sets. They don't use the same anything. So to do a real automation, you would have to take your different scripts that you've set up to automate and convert them to a different system every time you want to do that, every time you want to add a new vendor. So what's the real challenge here? The challenge is that you can't bring in multiple vendors. You're really locked into a vendor because you've got so much invested in learning, in time, in scripts, in automation, that it's really difficult to break out into a different vendor. So and that limits flexibility and freedom, right? You want to be able to change things, and you can't do that. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is, I'm going to skip ahead just to save a little time here. The solution is OpenConfig. I'm not an expert on OpenConfig. I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's the way the industry needs to go is to be able to disaggregate hardware from software, to be able to manage different things without having to be tied into a vendor. I work for a vendor. Full disclosure, I work for Arista, but I fully believe in the industry that we need to be able to manage anybody's system from your own tools. You shouldn't have to be locked into a vendor. You should be able to buy the best of breed for whatever resource on your network and manage it any way you want to. And not just manage it, but to do all the automation and do all of the troubleshooting you want to. Now, there's some great tools out there. You know, there's some great automation tools, or there's some great network management tools out there. That's not trying to take the place of these network management tools. This is just a way to let you build your own tools for what you need to do. So what is OpenConfig? OpenConfig is designed by users. It's not designed by vendor. Now, vendors need to participate because they have to have OpenConfig compliant devices. But it's really about being vendor neutral. It's about creating a model to be able to manage your different devices. So you have a model when you manage a Wi-Fi, for example, you manage a basic set of things like channel or transmit power. Those are the same across all vendors. So you shouldn't have to create, you should be able to have a model that manages all those things no matter which vendor it is, because you're managing essentially the same things. You want to make it easy to use, so you want to make it a very declarative configuration. You want to be able to get information from these systems to be able to do real-time management, to do real-time alerting. So you want to be able to stream telemetry when something changes to see what's going on. And then again, you want to have a common data model for everything. You don't want to have a unique data model for one vendor. Now, that doesn't say you can't. A vendor may have a data model for their special sauce that you can still use OpenConfig to create your special tools with. So OpenConfig is really user-driven. It's driven by some of the largest companies out there. And as Mike talked about, Google is one of the driving forces behind this because they didn't want to be locked into a single vendor. So they started this OpenConfig concept. They started talking to vendors. They started getting vendors to be OpenConfig compliant so you could manage these things and you could build your own tools. And this allows them to scale infinitely and really scale with any vendor at any time without changing their tools. So this is really about standards-based streaming time-sensitive telemetry, seeing what's going on. The value of this is you can have bi-directional streaming. You can change things, you can see what's coming back through. You can subscribe to a stream so you can always know what's going on. You don't have to do any polling, you don't have to do any waiting, you don't have to have any overhead. You subscribe and you receive the data. And then based on that data, you can do whatever you want to. You can react to things almost instantaneously. So basic OpenConfig components are the Google remote procedure call. So that's to be able to do things. It's secure, it's bi-directional. It's all programmable. I mean, everything here is about programmability. There's some a link there if you want to learn more about it. Another part of that is the network management of this. Same sort of thing. It's programmable. It allows you to do service differentiation, allows you to do lots of different things. So coming down to the wire here. So to OpenConfig models, allows you to do multiple things. For example, you can do discovery, you can see what's going on in the network, you can do set configurations of the model sets. For example, like multicast routing or IGMP. You can also monitor. You do a get or subscribe to get flow table information or link status. Again, with OpenConfig, you can get any kind of same data elements from disparate vendor solutions. And that's kind of the beauty of OpenConfig. I'm going to be ending a little early here because I cut my 40-deck slide down to 8. So what this is really about, and what I'm really trying to convince people of, is that OpenConfig is a very valuable way of breaking vendor lock-in, right? So and again, that's not to say that the vendors don't add value. They do. They add a lot of value. They have their own systems. They have their own intelligence. They do lots of really sophisticated things. But with OpenConfig, you can do a lot of very basic management and sophisticated management, if you want to, by subscribing to OpenConfig, by writing to OpenConfig, and by buying vendors that have OpenConfig data sets and models. And I'll give you early time. Thank you.